Welcome to the virtual tour of the Heritage Rose Garden of the Amador County Master Gardeners. As you may know, we were scheduled to have our first open garden day today, and we were so excited to be able to share this labor of love with you for the very first time. But the pandemic intervened, and to keep us all safe, we are offering you this virtual tour instead. In the future, we'll be having regular open garden days, and we hope you will join us in person then, so you can actually smell the roses. Here, in photographs taken by drone in December, you can see the layout of the garden before anything was in bloom. When we started 2 years ago, this space was hard clay, carpeted with thick, healthy weeds. Each rose had to be planted in a gopher cage, because the gopher holes were nearly as numerous as the weeds. Most of the roses are from starts, taken from the private garden of Judy Dean of Mountain Ranch. Judy Dean began collecting and propagating heritage roses 30 years ago, and now has more than 700 roses in her garden. About a third of her property burned in the 2015 Butte fire, and some of her roses burned to the ground. Because they grew on their own roots, most of them recovered. But it occurred to her and her husband Bob that to ensure preservation of the roses, there needed to be a second backup garden, which is where we came in. Heritage roses are classes of roses that existed before 1867, the year the first hybrid tea rose was introduced. Why are these roses important? First of all, because they're a part of our California history. But also, they're often fragrant, and they are hardy, drought-tolerant, and disease-resistant. Often found in cemeteries or at old homesteads, these old roses survived with profound neglect. No water, no rose food, no pruning, sometimes for a century. While our visit to the garden today must be virtual, the Heritage Rose Garden has one frequent guest who comes and goes as he pleases. This is Vinny, a friendly orange cat that lives next door to the garden and that always shows up to be petted. Here are a few of our roses. The Sutter Creek Catholic Cemetery rose, possibly Rosa Odorata, but that has not been positively established. Odorata was bred in Yunnan, China, and was imported to England in 1809. This one was planted long ago at the cemetery, where the first burial was in 1858. Madame Plantier. This lovely blush white rose is also known as the bride's rose. It blooms only once a year, but has an outstanding fragrance. The blossoms are creamy at first, becoming pure white with a little green pip or eye in the center. Marquesa Bocella. This hybrid perpetual is fragrant and repeat blooms. It came from the collection of the late Kay Polk, donated to the garden by her husband George. After we planted it, it seemed to die, but this spring it came back to life and now looks happy and healthy. Medieval rose. We're not positive what this rose is, but it may be autumn damask. Now that it's in bloom, we'll tackle its identification. With 10 or 12 people propagating roses for this garden, it has been a challenge to keep the tags on every rose, but that's part of the fun. Moser House Hybrid Perpetual. We have misnamed this in the garden, but we'll be fixing that soon. It was only after it bloomed that we realized it is not the Moser House shed rose, which is pale blush pink. Both were found on the Moser property in Mokelumne Hill, but this hybrid perpetual is deep pink. Mutabilis. The single petals open yellow, then become orange, rich pink, and finally crimson. With flowers of so many colors, it looks like brightly colored butterflies are perched on the bush. It blooms early and continuously, from spring to fall. Pearl d'Or, or pearl of gold. When the flowers open, they're apricot, then they become a golden buff pink. It blooms in flushes in spring, summer, and fall, and has a pleasing, strong fragrance. Jocine Hene. This deep pink rose has a strong damask fragrance. It blooms in flushes throughout the season and is described as rare today. The Cecile Brunner climbing rose is almost thornless. This rose produces large clusters of very small, perfectly shaped pink blooms with a sweet, slightly spicy fragrance. It's also known as the buttonhole rose or the sweetheart rose. The Duché rose is one of only a few white China roses, and its double blooms have a fruity fragrance. It blooms throughout the summer and is a compact shrub with lovely foliage. The climbing American Beauty rose has large, fragrant double blooms of deep pink with a cupped form. A mature bush is said to produce between 500 and 1,000 blooms a year, and the strong scent is sometimes noticed even before you see the flowers. The foothill penstemon is a luminous bloomer with spikes of narrow, bell-shaped blossoms of bright blue-purple. It attracts hummingbirds, butterflies, and other pollinators. This Blue Springs variety is a cultivar of the native foothill penstemon. Canyon Snow Pacific Iris. This is one of our California natives, a selection of Douglas iris. We also have two native California roses, Rosa californicus and Rosa nutkana. Both are small, pink, simple flowers, but both are very sweet. Our Rosa californicus hasn't bloomed yet, but the nutkana has set out a few flowers already. One of the things you would be likely to see in our garden, or in any garden, especially one with roses, is some aphids. Where you have roses, you have aphids. We check our roses at least once a week, and when we find aphids, we use a totally organic spray, plain water. With a strong stream of water, using the jet setting on our nozzle, most of the aphids are blasted right off the buds, never to return. As you can see, many of our roses are repeat bloomers, and they should be in flower much of the summer through fall. So even though you must see them virtually right now, we hope to be able to open while many of them are still blooming. We can only open when UC Davis gives us the okay. Right now, that is not expected until at least May 31st, but we hope to see you after that. Thank you.